Trees as bony and twisted as an old woman's fingers, pitch-black mold and moss clinging to their bark, and instead of a blue sky, a dirty, polluted world without a single ray of sun. This is a place teeming with bizarre monsters that would never be seen in the real world. But for our main character, Kim Woojin, this kind of phenomenon is as real as it gets. Because right now, he is in danger. With its razor-sharp teeth, the monster lunges straight for his head. After being mauled, blood splatters everywhere, killing him on the spot. But after dying in that world, he wakes up from the nightmare and finds himself back in reality. At first, he refused to believe that the dream was real. But since it has been happening for 12 years straight, he convinces himself that the world in his dreams must be fake. Years have passed since this strange phenomena began, yet each time it happens, the pain feels so real as if he is truly dying. Outside his room, the world remains peaceful, completely different from the horror inside his dreams. While staying cooped up, he writes down information about the monsters he encounters, carefully recording their characteristics and behavior. He believes that someday this information might help him survive, and that thought alone allows him to endure the pain he feels in that dream. But what hurts him more than dying over and over again is not the pain from those deaths. It's the lack of sleep. He is so exhausted that it takes every ounce of strength just to keep his mind from breaking. Because if he falls asleep in this reality, he will instantly be sent back to that nightmarish world where different monsters continue to kill him. And the moment he dies in that dream, he returns to reality without a single injury. But because this happens every time he sleeps, there is no proper way for him to truly rest, and it is now taking a serious toll on his body in reality. Despite that hellish nightmare, he never gave up or allowed himself to be killed easily each time he was dragged into that other world. From weapon training, martial arts, swordsmanship, jungle survival, to military tactics, he mastered everything he could over those 12 years, all in the hope that one day he would finally stop dying. Because of that relentless training, his senses became sharper, far beyond those of an ordinary person. And thanks to that heightened awareness, he began sensing monsters before they could reach him, slowly reducing the number of times he died in that nightmare world. However, surviving longer was not enough, because the real problem he faced had never disappeared. He was still unable to sleep properly, to the point that he began seeking medical advice from professionals. But in the end, all he received was a simple suggestion: find something he truly wants to do, and maybe then he would finally be able to sleep peacefully at night. Thinking about it that day, the only thing he truly wanted was to rest. But the problem is, to rest, he needs sleep, and that is the very thing he cannot have. He just wants to sleep soundly. He craves it so badly that he would trade anything just to experience it. Suddenly, a stream of blood begins dripping from his nose. At first, he thinks it's nothing serious, but when he sees how heavily it flows, and that it shows no sign of stopping, he begins to panic, his vision spinning as his eyes roll back. Not even a minute passes before his body collapses onto the floor. After years of extreme fatigue without proper rest, his body can no longer endure it. And just like that, his life comes to an end. But contrary to what he expected, he slowly manages to open his eyes, unsure if he has truly died for real. Upon fully opening them, he looks around at his surroundings, and to his surprise, this place feels familiar, because this world is none other than the same place he enters every time he falls asleep. In reality, while scanning the area, he suddenly feels a presence nearby. Before he can be discovered, he instinctively takes cover, hiding himself from the monster lurking in the shadows. Seeing that it still hasn't charged toward him, Kim Woo-jin begins to think that he might be safe for now. But another problem quickly crosses his mind. He may have been transported to this world again, but considering the amount of blood he lost in reality, he realizes that his real body in the other world might already be lifeless. And if that's the case, whether he wants to believe it or not, if he dies here now, there will be no reality for him to return to. He slowly stands up, forcing himself to remain calm despite the situation. Because now that he is here, he understands one thing clearly: this is his last life in this nightmarish world. And from this moment on, this place is his reality. He knows exactly what kind of world this is and what he must do if he wants to survive. Given the situation, he understands that fighting right now would be a mistake. The first thing he needs to do is reach a bright area, a place the monsters in this forest despise. But just as he is about to escape, he suddenly stops walking. He can't quite explain what he's feeling at this moment. Yet instinctively, he reaches behind his back and draws the blade from its sheath. Instead of running away, he grips his weapon and begins to show himself in the open, where the monster could see him. Maybe his actions are influenced by the fact that he finally slept deeply for the first time in years. Or perhaps it's because this body feels younger than the one he had in reality. But none of that matters anymore, because at this moment, it is already too late to escape. The monster has finally noticed him, and it charges toward him at terrifying speed. But instead of cowering in fear in front of the monster, Woojin tightens his grip on his sword as every fiber of his body screams at him. At this moment, he must not falter. He must not retreat. He has to face the monster head-on and survive. Driven by an overwhelming determination to live, he strikes. With a single decisive attack, he pierces his blade straight through the lizard-like monster's body, cutting it cleanly in half. Seeing the killing intent burning in his eyes, it becomes hard to tell which of them is truly the monster. The creature's body instantly collapses to the ground after being split apart. The fight happens so quickly that it almost looks as if Woojin didn't even break a sweat after killing it. After their battle, the murky sky above suddenly changes as faint rays of sunlight pierce through the clouds, signaling the beginning of Woojin's journey. But he isn't satisfied yet. He crouches beside the monster's corpse and begins cutting into its body with his blade, as if searching for something hidden within. After a moment, he finally finds what he was looking for: a blue-colored essence buried deep inside the monster's body. Judging by the way Woojin stares at it, this small essence seems incredibly valuable. He holds it near his mouth, pausing for a moment as he reflects on the life he once had. But if he wants to survive in this hellish world, he must abandon the last traces of his humanity. Without hesitation, he bites down on the monster's essence, chewing it as if it were some kind of delicacy. While aura farming with the help of a sudden gust of wind, he started looking at the sky. Silently, he makes a promise to himself. In this brutal world, he will do whatever it takes to survive. And the first thing he needs to do is find a brighter place, somewhere with fewer monsters than the depth of this forest. With that thought in mind, he sheathes his blade and begins walking toward his next destination. 1 month has passed since he was transferred to this world, and living here brought an unexpected benefit, something he had been longing for all this time: a perfect, uninterrupted sleep. For the first time in years, he is finally able to rest. Over the past few weeks, he has continued traveling farther away from the forest, moving toward brighter areas where monsters appear less frequently. His goal is simple: survive. However, he has started to notice a strange change within himself. Sometimes, he feels an overwhelming urge to fight monsters. But that doesn't mean he rushes into battle every time the feeling appears, because he knows very well that in order to survive in this world, unnecessary fights must be avoided. Risking his life for the thrill of battle would be nothing short of madness. Still, there are moments when he cannot suppress the instinct to fight whenever a monster appears before him. The only times he truly hunts monsters are when he needs food. And fortunately for him, right now, he is getting hungry. Unfortunately for the monster that was busy feeding on another creature, it never expected that this would be its final meal. In a single swift motion, Woojin's sword flashes through the air, severing the monster's head from its body. But food isn't the only reason he hunts monsters. There is also the essence hidden inside their bodies, a source of power that Woojin can absorb. Without even the slightest hesitation, he bites straight into the essence, tearing it apart with his teeth without even thinking about cooking it first. He has no choice. If he wants to increase his chances of survival, he needs to become stronger. And ever since he began consuming these monster essences, adapting to this brutal world has become much easier for him. And there is one more thing he discovered during the past few months. This body he now inhabits seems to belong to someone with a fairly high status, someone who is a third-class mercenary, judging from the items he found inside the bag he carries. Not only that, he can somehow understand the writing in this world, even though he has never seen this language in his previous life. Because of the existence of this mercenary token, he comes to an important conclusion. There must be people living somewhere in this world, which means there could be human civilization out there waiting to be found. After taking a short rest, he continues his journey and eventually notices something in the distance, a faint source of light. But before he starts walking toward it, something else catches his attention. On the ground, he spots a trap clearly made by human hands, the kind used for hunting monsters. The moment he sees it, he immediately reaches a conclusion. There are other humans somewhere inside this forest. Without wasting a single second, he begins running toward the light, hoping to find whoever set the trap. Little by little, the light grows brighter as he gets closer. And finally, he finds his destination. A small house stands quietly in the forest. Proof that another human truly exists in this monster-filled land. Kim Woojin feels a surge of excitement the moment he sees it. But even with another human nearby, he refuses to let his guard down. Moving carefully, he prepares to draw the blade from his back, anticipating a possible attack from whoever might be inside. Yet when he steps into the house, there is no one there. Instead of another person, the only thing he finds is a single book resting on the table. Curious, he quickly picks it up to see what it contains. The title reads, Demonic Realm Chronicles, a name that clearly refers to this very world. But what shocks him even more than the title is the content written inside the book. He never expected that the history of this place, along with many of the important terms used in this world, would be recorded in such careful and detailed writing. He realizes at that moment that if he wants to survive in this world, not just inside this forest, this book is something he absolutely needs. But suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoes from the door. An old man appears, immediately pointing a crossbow straight at Kim Woojin and demanding to know his identity. He warns him to answer clearly if he doesn't want a hole through his head. For the first time since arriving in this world, Kim Woojin is finally standing face to face with another person. And although the sight of another human should have made him happy, their first meeting could hardly be called pleasant. It seems he has already been mistaken for a robber. Kim Woojin slowly turns around, raising both of his hands in the air as a sign that he means no harm. He calmly explains that he simply found the house deep in this remote forest and entered out of curiosity. Whether the old man believes his explanation or not doesn't seem to matter. The old man only tells him one thing: leave. He has no business being here. Kim Woojin understands what the old man means, but even as he prepares to leave, his eyes can't help drifting back toward the book resting on the table. Instead of walking away empty-handed, he gathers his courage. He asks the old man if he could at least borrow the book. He even offers to pay any price, as long as he is allowed to read it. But the old man doesn't accept the offer right away. Instead, he asks a simple question: what would Kim Woojin do if he refused? Kim Woojin pauses for a moment. He understands better than anyone just how valuable that book is if he wants to survive in this world. And so, instead of continuing to negotiate peacefully, his hand slowly moves toward the blade hidden behind his back. Then, he speaks. If the old man refuses to lend him the book, then it seems he might really have to become a robber. The tension inside the room instantly rises. Neither of them shows any intention of lowering their weapons. Despite his old age, the man holds the crossbow with steady hands, its aim fixed directly at Kim Woojin's head. And even though he has no idea how strong this old man truly is, Kim Woojin doesn't feel even the slightest doubt that he could lose, even while facing a ranged weapon with nothing but a blade. A few seconds pass before the old man finally lets out a deep sigh. He admits that a robber probably wouldn't ask to read a book. With that, he lowers his crossbow and begins to introduce himself, saying that it's nice to meet Kim Woojin and that his name is Hector. Seeing the old man lower his guard, Kim Woojin introduces himself as well, but his name sounds strange and unfamiliar to Hector, who struggles to pronounce it properly. So Kim Woojin simply tells him to call him Jin instead. Even after resolving that small issue, however, another problem remains. No matter how much Jin needs the book, it is also something very precious to the old man. So if Jin truly wants to read it, he will have to stay here. In exchange, the only thing Hector asks is for Jin to help him with the household chores. And Jin gladly accepts the offer. That very night, Jin begins staying at Hector's house. He quickly notices that while Hector may appear gruff on the outside, he doesn't seem like a bad person. In fact, Hector even offers him a bowl of warm soup for dinner. For Jin, this is the first time he has seen warm food since arriving in this world. His eyes widen in surprise the moment the bowl is placed in front of him, and after taking the first bite, he can't help but tear up, overwhelmed with gratitude toward Hector for giving him such a simple yet precious meal. Days pass as Jin continues living in Hector's house. But one day, for the first time, Hector tells Jin that he might take longer than usual before returning home. The reason he is heading out, despite the danger, is because he wants revenge against the monsters that killed his comrades. Normally, Jin wouldn't worry much. Even at his age, Hector has shown that he is quite strong. But this time, it is the first time Jin has ever seen Hector look nervous. Because of that, Jin quickly comes to a conclusion. The monster Hector is planning to face must be incredibly powerful. After Hector leaves, Jin remains alone in the house. He spends the time continuing to read the demonic realm chronicles, hoping to expand his knowledge about this world. According to the book, all stories begin with the Northern Empire. Blinded by greed, the king of the Northern Empire laid his hands upon an otherworldly gate, which was said to hold the truth of all creation and unimaginable power. But instead of the answers he sought, what the king saw beyond the gate was something far more ominous. Countless monstrous eyes stared back at him from the darkness. And that moment marked the beginning of a calamity. Powerful monsters poured out of the otherworldly gate, and within just 9 years, the northern lands were completely transformed into what is now known as the demonic realm. In response to the disaster, humanity united several powerful factions to form the Order Alliance. Together, they constructed a massive barrier in an attempt to stop the spread of the demonic realm. After finishing the book, Jin slowly closes it. There was a lot of useful information written inside, but one detail in particular captures his attention. According to the records, the deeper someone travels into the demonic realm, the stronger the monsters become, which means that the opposite should also be true. And based on what he has noticed during his journey toward the light, the monsters around him have indeed been getting weaker. While Jin is busy thinking about the contents of the book, Hector is somewhere in the forest, running with all his strength toward the house where he left Jin behind. Meanwhile, Jin continues wondering just how deep inside the demonic realm he had originally been wandering. And if he truly had been deep inside its core, then just how strong has he actually become? Hector continues running desperately through the forest. For a brief moment, he wonders if he has finally managed to escape whatever was chasing him. But when he glances back over his shoulder, he realizes the coast is far from clear. A group of monsters are still chasing him relentlessly. With their overwhelming numbers, Hector knows he has no chance of winning. But even so, he refuses to give up. Instead of continuing to flee, he suddenly stops and turns to face them head-on. With incredible speed, he fires 3 arrows from his crossbow, reloading each time he finds even the smallest opportunity. But it's all for nothing. The werewolf leading the group simply swings its claws, effortlessly deflecting every arrow flying toward it. Fear begins to show on Hector's face as he realizes how easily his attacks were stopped. With no other choice left, he turns and runs again. But as he continues fleeing, he suddenly notices someone walking toward him. It's Jin, and he is holding his weapon in his hand. Instead of using Jin's sudden appearance as a chance to escape, Hector becomes even more worried about Jin's safety. He shouts at him to run if he wants to stay alive, warning him about the monsters chasing right behind him. But instead of listening, Jin suddenly begins sprinting straight toward the monsters that were pursuing Hector. Hector is stunned by what he sees. He can't understand why Jin would charge toward the monsters instead of running away. Meanwhile, Jin's face remains completely calm, as if the enemies before him are nothing more than insignificant ants. Without even the slightest hesitation, he leaps forward toward the werewolf, blocking his path. The werewolf immediately swings its sharp claws, attempting to intercept Jin's attack. But what happens next is something it never expected. Instead of stopping Jin, its claws are pierced through, and in the same instant, its entire arm is torn apart by Jin's blade. But Jin doesn't stop there. Not only does he slice through the werewolf's arm, he drives his blade straight through its body, cutting the monster cleanly in half. In less than a second, the creature's life is completely drained. Its knees buckle before the 2 halves of its body collapse to the ground. The other monsters chasing Hector suddenly stop in their tracks, shocked by how easily one of their own was killed. But the one most shocked by the scene is Hector himself. He can hardly believe what he is seeing. The enemy he considered life-threatening was defeated in a single strike by the very man he allowed to stay in his house just because he wanted to read a book. Only when Jin calls out his name does Hector finally snap out of his daze. Jin then asks him a simple question. Was the monster he just killed considered strong? Hector wears a confused expression on his face, asking Jin if he is serious about that question. Was the werewolf he just killed really being questioned as to whether it was strong? Seeing how serious Jin is, Hector eventually calms down and answers honestly. He tells him that the werewolf wasn't just strong, it was incredibly strong. After hearing Hector's answer, Jin finally understands where his current strength stands in this world. Now that he has his answer, he turns his attention to the monsters still chasing Hector. He plans to deal with them first, and only afterward hear the full story about what happened. Looking at their numbers, Jin quietly observes them. To him, they don't look particularly strong, but there are more than 40 of them, and even a small mistake could cost him his life. Still, he quickly begins forming a plan on how to deal with them. Instead of fighting them all one by one, he decides to target the second in command, the werewolf with the brown fur. If he kills it, the pack's morale will likely collapse. But from the monster's perspective, the one standing before them doesn't look like a normal human. It feels as if they are facing a demon, a human radiating an ominous presence unlike anything they have ever sensed before. The werewolf, who has taken the role of the new leader, locks eyes with Jin, attempting to intimidate him into backing down. But, contrary to what it expected, the human doesn't move. Jin simply stands there, staring back at them as if he is ready for a bloodbath. Fear slowly begins creeping into the creature's mind. Unable to withstand Jin's gaze, it eventually lowers its eyes and looks away. Instead, it turns to look at the rest of its pack. After a brief moment, it finally makes a decision. A decision that shocks every monster standing behind it. The new leader turns around and walks away from the battle. Its companions stare in disbelief, unable to understand why their leader would retreat, even though they hold the overwhelming advantage in numbers. But because he values his life above everything else, their looks of disappointment mean nothing to him as he sprints away, leaving them behind. He tries to speak to them in their own language, explaining why he chose to act that way. But the others only stare at him with cold expressions. They can't believe that the second in command of their pack would turn out to be a coward who runs for his life. Seeing their new leader retreat, the rest of the pack soon follows him, leaving the battlefield behind. And just like that, Jin is left standing there, watching them disappear into the distance. While Jin remains calm, Hector is completely perplexed by what he has just witnessed. He can hardly believe that the wolves, creatures known for their bravery, would simply run away from a fight. But instead of feeling disappointed, Jin finds himself intrigued by the pack's new leader. In that brief moment, the creature showed sharp awareness of the situation, choosing to protect its own life rather than throw it away in a hopeless battle. After the tense encounter, the two of them return to Hector's house, bringing along the corpse of the werewolf Jin had just killed. Because of how dangerous that monster is, Hector estimates that its body could be worth at least 40 gold coins. Still unfamiliar with the currency of this world, Jin asks Hector if that amount is considered a lot. Hector immediately answers yes while treating his wounds. To give Jin an idea, he explains that 40 gold coins would be enough for someone to live comfortably for 6 to 7 years without working. Hearing that number completely shocks Jin. He can hardly believe that a monster he considers weak could be worth such a huge amount of money. And that realization leads him to one conclusion. In this world, he might be able to become rich. A sinister smile slowly spreads across Jin's face. He never expected to hit such a jackpot from killing a single weak monster. Whenever he runs short on money, he could simply hunt more monsters like this and easily earn enormous wealth. Perhaps life in this world might even turn out to be easier than the past 12 years of suffering he endured. While Jin is busy planning his future, Hector suddenly drops several items on top of the werewolf's corpse. They include dried jerky, a pouch filled with silver coins, and a pioneer map, something that could greatly help Jin, who still knows almost nothing about how this world works. After placing everything into a single bag, Hector tells Jin to take it along with the werewolf's corpse and head to Pioneer Village. There, he should look for a man named Jacob and trade the corpse for a fair price. Hesitant because of Hector's generosity, Jin asks if it is really all right for him to receive something so valuable. Hector simply explains that he is paying Jin back for saving his life. Not only that, he also admits that he held a deep grudge against the werewolf Jin, killed earlier. In a way, Jin had already avenged him. Slowly, Hector reaches out his hand and asks for a handshake, the hand of the man who saved his life. He thanks Jin once again for helping him get his revenge, and says that he hopes they might meet again in the future if the opportunity arises. Without much hesitation, Jin accepts Hector's hand and tells him that he is also grateful for everything he has received. After preparing to leave, Jin takes one last look at Hector, the first person he met in this strange world. Now that everything has been settled, he begins preparing for the new adventure waiting ahead of him. But as he walks away, Jin has no idea that someone is secretly watching him from afar. It is the leader of the werewolf pack he fought earlier, the one who chose to retreat. The creature silently observes Jin, the human who saved Hector and displayed such overwhelming strength. After walking for several minutes, Jin finally arrives at the place Hector told him about, Pioneer Village. Before entering, he pauses for a moment and observes the settlement. For such a small village, it actually doesn't look too bad. At the entrance, the guards check his belongings, especially the mercenary tag that serves as proof of his identity. Although he successfully passes the inspection, Jin quickly notices something strange. The people in the village do not seem to welcome him warmly. In fact, some of them even glare at him with open hostility, as if they are plotting something unpleasant. Jin quietly thinks to himself that perhaps it's simply because he is a stranger they have never seen before, which puts everyone on high alert. From his point of view, that reaction is completely understandable, because in this world, the things more dangerous than monsters are other people. The first place he heads to is where most of the people gather. A simple tavern, a place where people drink, eat, and enjoy themselves freely. Jin wastes no time. He walks past the crowd and heads straight toward the bartender. Placing his belongings beside him, the bartender casually asks if he wants a beer. But alcohol is the last thing on Jin's mind. He declines the offer and instead asks if he knows where he can find a man named Jacob. Coincidentally, the bartender doesn't even get the chance to answer. The man sitting right next to him reacts the moment he hears that name. That man is Jacob, the very person Hector told Jin to find. But the moment Jin sees his face, he can't help but feel suspicious. There's something about him that gives off the impression of a scammer. Even so, Jin proceeds to explain that he was sent by Hector and that he was told he could sell the werewolf hide to him. Hearing that, Jacob suddenly jumps out of his seat in shock. He can't believe that Hector actually managed to kill a werewolf. Of course, he is mistaken. But since Jin doesn't consider it important, he doesn't bother correcting him. When Jin opens his bag, Jacob quickly confirms that it is indeed a real werewolf hide. As the contents are revealed, the surrounding people begin to take interest. However, instead of admiration, their gazes are filled with suspicion. Jacob suddenly bursts into laughter as if everything is going exactly as he expected. He confidently says that even though Hector is already old, he always believed that one day he would succeed in killing a werewolf. Before Jin realizes it, the bystanders inside the tavern begin surrounding him, blocking every possible way out. Still, Jin remains calm. Instead of reacting immediately, he simply asks Jacob what exactly they think they are doing. Without even a hint of guilt, Jacob begins putting on the werewolf hide, acting as if he is the one who killed it. Then he coldly warns Jin if he wants to keep his life, he should leave. Just as he suspected, Jin was right all along. Jacob really is a scammer. But since he was sent here by Hector, Jin still decides to give him one last chance to make things right. Instead, Jacob simply laughs and explains himself. He claims that everything Hector has done, including killing the werewolf, is just repayment for the investment they made in him while he was out there. Now he plans to sell the hide and keep all the money, easily recovering everything they spent. At that moment, Jin's blood begins to boil with rage. He starts thinking about what he should do to someone who dares to scam him like this. For a brief second, he even considers killing Jacob on the spot, but he restrains himself. After all, he can't just kill a person over a single hide. Or so he thought. Suddenly, Jacob splashes the beer he was drinking straight onto Jin's face. The liquid drips down as the tavern falls silent for a moment. Jacob smirks and tells him not to act clever. If he wants to stay alive, he should leave. That is the final straw. Unable to endure it any longer, Jin slowly stands up from his seat. Without saying a word, he begins walking toward the door, drenched, humiliated, yet eerily calm. Behind him, Jacob bursts into laughter while checking his newly claimed loot. Just before Jin reaches the exit, Jacob calls out to him, saying that he made the smart choice by leaving. But then, A loud thud echoes throughout the tavern. Jacob instinctively turns his head toward the sound. What he sees next is something he never expected. Jin didn't leave. Instead, he used the tables and chairs to block the entrance, sealing the door shut. Now that everything is in place, Jin slowly calls out Jacob's name. His eyes burn with killing intent, and in a cold voice, he gives him a warning. If he was going to scam someone, he should have aimed for the neck, not the back. Jacob's expression hardens. He takes back what he said about Jin making the smart choice. Then, without hesitation, he orders his men to teach this brat a lesson for not knowing his place. Several men immediately charge toward Jin, but Jin remains completely composed. As he prepares for battle, a thought crosses his mind. People like them won't make him feel guilty, even if he kills them. Now that his conscience is clear, he moves. In an instant, he blocks the incoming attacks from Jacob's men. The blade trembles from the sheer force of the impact. The attacker is shocked. He didn't expect this kid to block his strike so easily. Not only that, Jin is fast. They had already closed the distance, yet he still managed to react and deflect the attack in time. Before the man can even process what's happening, Jin moves. In an instant, his body is torn apart by Jin's counterattack. Meanwhile, another man takes advantage of the opening and attacks Jin from the side. With a massive axe in hand, he swings it down with full force. But it hits nothing. Jin had already stopped his movement at the perfect moment, avoiding the attack completely. Using the objects around him, Jin grabs a nearby table and flips it toward the attacker. The sudden motion blocks the man's vision, disorienting him. As the attacker struggles to push the table away, Jin follows up. With a single swing, he slices through the table as if it were soft tofu, piercing straight through it, and through the man behind it. Even after such a brutal strike, Jin doesn't even blink. To him, they no longer look like people. At that moment, fear begins to take over. A shiver runs down one man's spine. His cold sweat drips from his face. He can't help but wonder, where did this monster come from? Someone this strong should have been known in this area. There's no way a fighter like him could go unnoticed. Regret slowly fills his mind. He should have never messed with this kid. But now, it's far too late. Jin is already in the middle of cleaning up the trash. Even though he is outnumbered, not a single hint of fear can be seen in him. He completely outmatches them. One of the remaining men rushes in, fighting with his fists fitted with small blades. But even that isn't enough. Realizing this, Jin switches his approach. With a single decisive strike, he uses his weapon to deliver the finishing blow, slicing the man clean in half without mercy. One by one, they fall, until finally, Jin stands alone in the middle of their corpses, silent, waiting for the rest of Jacob's men to make their move. But after seeing that Jin isn't even tired after the fight, Jacob quickly comes to a realization. They have no chance of winning against him. So instead of continuing a hopeless battle, he orders his men to run for their lives. All of them agree. This is a lost cause. Since the door is blocked by Jin, they rush toward the windows instead. Without hesitation, they throw themselves through, using their own bodies just to escape. But even after all that effort, it turns out to be useless. Because instead of escaping Jin, they end up facing another monster. Jacob's eyes widen in disbelief. What is a monster doing in the middle of the village? Standing before them is the new leader of the wolf pack, the same one that retreated before from fighting Jin. For some unknown reason, it is now right here in the village. Jacob is trapped. In front of him is a monster, and behind him is the man he just tried to scam. After stepping outside, Jin also notices the creature. At first, he feels a sense of familiarity. Then, it clicks. This is the same wolf, the one who became the new leader of the pack earlier. The two lock eyes, but strangely, the wolf doesn't seem to hold any hostility toward Jin. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Jin. He coldly asks if the wolf came here just to die like its former leader. The moment the wolf hears those words, fear overwhelms it. It clearly remembers just how terrifying this human is. And in an attempt to survive, it does something no one expects. The wolf suddenly drops to the ground and starts rolling over, like a harmless dog begging for attention. Its tail wags rapidly as it acts cute, desperately trying to show submission. The people watching are completely stunned. Their fear slowly turns into confusion. They can't comprehend what they are seeing, a monster behaving like a domesticated animal. Even Jin is caught off guard. For a moment, he simply stares at it, wondering, Why is this wolf acting like a dog? Jin narrows his eyes, thinking to himself that this wolf might be trying to get on his good side. So to test that idea, he slowly points toward the three remaining men and gives a simple command: attack. The moment the wolf understands, its eyes light up with hope. This is its chance. Without wasting a single second, it dashes forward, claws and fangs ready. It pounces on the nearest man and sinks its teeth straight into his neck, killing him instantly. The other two freeze in terror as the wolf stands over the body, proving its loyalty through blood. Watching this unfold, Jin remains calm, but deep inside, he comes to a realization. This monster might actually be useful. While the wolf Jin commanded is still busy gnawing on the corpse of Jacob's henchman, Jacob begins to panic. His mind races, unsure of what to do. But one thing is clear: he needs to survive. And seeing that Jin still hasn't killed him, despite everything that happened earlier, an idea suddenly forms in his head. He immediately drops to his knees, bowing deeply as he begins apologizing. He tells Jin that he is willing to do anything at all, just to be forgiven and spared. But deep inside, his thoughts are completely different. He burns with anger and humiliation, already dreaming of the day he could take revenge on this kid. For now, however, survival comes first. Unfortunately for him, Jin is not someone who can be fooled so easily. Without warning, Jin thrusts his blade downward, the tip scraping past Jacob's head and stabbing straight into the ground. Jacob freezes. For a split second, he truly thought he was going to die. Fear quickly spreads across his face. Slowly, with trembling lips, he addresses Jin with forced respect and asks why he almost killed him just now. Inside his mind, Jin clicks his tongue. To him, Jacob is nothing more than a shameless bastard trying to deceive him again. He can clearly see what Jacob is doing, trying to talk his way out of the situation, thinking Jin is just some naive kid he can manipulate with empty words. But what Jacob doesn't know is this: Jin has already experienced this kind of thing before. Back in his previous life, when he was still working in the real world, he had heard countless apologies from people who had wronged him. One memory, in particular, resurfaces. There was a time when his manager failed to give him his salary. The excuse was simple: the company was going through some difficulties. He was asked for understanding. Back then, Jin didn't think much of it. He convinced himself that he just needed to endure for now, and that eventually, things would get better, and he would receive what he was owed. But that was his mistake. Once he accepted the delay, it didn't stop at a few weeks, it kept happening. Weeks turned into months, and he continued working without receiving a single payment. Eventually, driven by necessity, Jin gathered the courage to speak up. He reminded his boss that he needed the money he had worked so hard for over those past months. But instead of an apology, his boss simply called him a punk for not understanding their situation, accusing him of being selfish, saying that everyone should stick together when times get rough. Remembering those days, Jin's expression darkens. Those moments were some of the hardest times in his life, struggling just to survive. And now, even in this new world, he is facing the same kind of people. But back then, he learned something important. Meanwhile, as Jin slowly turns his back, Jacob begins to feel hope. He thinks his act has worked. A smile creeps onto his face as he imagines his revenge coming sooner than expected. Seizing the opportunity, he pulls out a hidden dagger. Then, without hesitation, he lunges toward Jin's back, shouting for him to die for being so naive. But Jin already knows. He had seen through Jacob from the very beginning. Before the blade can even reach him, Jin catches Jacob's wrist mid-air, stopping the attack completely. Because of his past experiences, Jin understands one thing clearly: people like Jacob don't know what remorse truly means. And since that is their true nature, Jin no longer hesitates. In a single swift motion, he swings his blade, decapitating Jacob on the spot, ending his life before he could ever deceive another person again. Jacob's lifeless body collapses onto the ground, and as Jin looks down at it, he makes a silent promise to himself. He will never allow himself to be treated as a pushover again. But his problems aren't over yet. This time, it doesn't involve humans. His gaze shifts toward the wolf that has been following him. He begins to wonder what he should do with it. Meanwhile, the wolf busily rummages through the pouches of the men it helped kill. One by one, it brings the items back to Jin, as if trying to prove its usefulness. It seems the wolf has succeeded. Jin slowly sheaths his sword and comes to a decision. Seeing that the creature possesses a certain level of intelligence, He asks it a question. Does it want to travel alongside him? Without wasting a single second, the wolf eagerly bumps its head against Jin if giving its answer. Despite being skeptical at first, Jin finds his hand instinctively reaching out, gently caressing the wolf's fur. At that moment, he realizes he has no reason to refuse. He accepts the wolf's decision to follow him. And just like that, a master and servant relationship is formed between them. Jin gives a faint smile, calling the wolf Mutt, treating it like a stray dog that chose him as its owner. After that encounter, Jin heads out to find an inn where he can rest. That night, he finally gets a full night of uninterrupted sleep. Morning arrives, and with it, his new companion by his side. Jin can't help but smile. Once again, he experienced a deep and peaceful sleep, something he had longed for all those years. Before heading out, he stretches his body, and the wolf beside him mimics his movements. After preparing himself, Jin steps outside and begins washing the clothes he soaked overnight, still stained with blood. As he quietly cleans them, a thought begins to bother him. Since arriving in this world, he has killed people for the first time. Not just one, but many. What confuses him the most is this. Why doesn't he feel even the slightest bit of guilt? He asks himself if it's because those people were nothing but trash. People who deserve to die. But deep inside, he knows that isn't the real reason. What he truly felt back then was something else. It was excitement, the same thrill he experienced while hunting monsters back in the forest when he first arrived in this world. Slowly, he places his hand over his chest. He can feel it. Something inside him is changing. Ever since he came to this world, something within him has started to shift. He wonders if it's a curse or something else entirely. But at the same time, he can't deny one thing. This change has helped him survive. And that's all that matters. One thing is certain now. His life in this world will be completely different from the one he had before. He no longer wants to suffer pointlessly. He wants to live freely, to live in abundance, to enjoy the life he has now. After the unfortunate events in the first pioneer village, Jin eventually makes his way to the fifth pioneer city, this time to finally sell the werewolf pelt he obtained. Since people might get scared of mud, Jin tells him to stay nearby and keep out of sight. As he observes the townspeople, he recalls something from the book he read at Hector's house. If he wants to claim a bounty for the werewolf he killed, he needs to visit the Order Alliance. According to the book, there should be a branch of the Order Alliance in this city. With that in mind, he decides to head there first. After walking for a while, he finally finds the building of the Order Alliance. Inside, the receptionist looks bored, as if nothing ever happens in this place. There are barely any visitors, and the day feels painfully slow. Suddenly, a loud thud echoes across the counter. Startled, the receptionist looks up and sees Jin standing there, having just dropped his luggage in front of him. Without wasting time, Jin tells him that he is here to claim a bounty for the monster pelt he brought. Since the receptionist doesn't recognize Jin, he assumes that this is just some random man trying to pass off a dog's skin as something valuable. But the moment he loosens the belt and reveals what's inside, his eyes widen in shock. This is no ordinary pelt. It's a werewolf pelt. Struggling to compose himself, he asks Jin if he was the one who hunted it. Understanding that his answer will determine his credibility, Jin replies honestly, yes, he was the one who killed it. Realizing how serious the situation is, the receptionist immediately tells Jin to wait inside while they determine the proper bounty. After some time passes, a man suddenly enters the room, apologizing for the delay. Now that everything has been verified, he hands Jin a pouch filled with gold coins, his reward. As Jin takes a closer look, he realizes something. This amount of money is enough for him to live comfortably for at least 6 to 7 years. It almost doesn't feel real, but now that he is holding it in his hands, he feels a different kind of excitement, a tremble very different from the thrill he feels when hunting monsters. While Jin is lost in thought, he is suddenly interrupted when the man who brought the gold calls out his name. He asks Jin if he'd be interested in taking on another request, mentioning that he has a favor to ask. Curious, Jin asks what kind of request he is talking about. The man explains that a monster has recently appeared in a nearby quarry, causing serious problems. Because of it, the workers can no longer enter the area. And since they can't mine bloodstone, money has stopped circulating throughout the city. As a result, the entire place is slowly being pushed toward ruin. What makes things worse is that the workers claim the monster is even stronger than a werewolf. That is why the man believes Jin might be able to handle it. After all, he is the one who brought down a werewolf. Jin shows interest, but before agreeing, he asks an important question. What kind of monster are they dealing with? Because for him, survival always comes first. The man answers without hesitation. The monster is called Mad Skull, a creature, with a bounty of 70 gold coins. The moment Jin hears the name, he immediately recognizes it. He has read about this monster before in the book, and more importantly, he has already faced one in the past. He knows exactly what kind of creature it is. A monster with an incredibly hard skull, a being driven by insane aggression, possessing strength and durability far beyond that of a werewolf. After hearing the name, Jin finally understands why no one has been able to defeat it. Even for him, it took an entire month to kill one for the first time. And during that time, he died 28 times. Realizing how urgent the situation is, the man asks Jin once more. Is he willing to accept this request and subdue the Mad Skull? Jin doesn't hesitate for long. He already has his answer. With a calm expression, he accepts the request. Because his next prey has already been decided.